So I thought to myself, I didn't really talk to my teammates about it, but I said, if I could get away on my own, I know this is audacious thinking, this is stage 1A of the Tour de France, then I could win some of those time bonus sprints and leapfrog ahead on GC.
Welcome to the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast. I'm Matthew Pioro. With me is Matt Hansen. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, Matthew.
The feature interview for this episode is a special one. On July 5th, 1986, that's 40 years ago, something historic happened in Sceaux, a suburb of France. A plucky Canadian named Alex Stieda got away from the pack. By the end of that stage, he had earned the yellow jersey. He led the Tour de France. He became not only the first Canadian, but the first male North American to lead the world's most prestigious road race. In this episode, Alex tells us just how everything came together 40 years ago. But first, Matt, we must discuss a Canadian kerfuffle.
It's not our group ride either.
It's not our group ride. It's Gravel Nationals. Our colleague, Terry McCall, was covering the race on June 14th. We had heard early news that Michael Woods won the elite men's race. Terry then messaged all of us at Canadian Cycling that Gravel Nationals was canceled. This was even after some races finished. What was your reaction there?
I was kind of bummed because I was looking forward to one of those Hockey Canada jerseys again, No, but I mean, obviously, it's terrible for everyone, right? I mean, we know how much money it costs to go to these races, and the people make it their goal, and I mean, it's just bad. The organizer, the people watching, I mean, it's not good when things go south like that.
Exactly. There was disappointment all around, voiced by athletes on social media. I should add that the women's race didn't finish, that the women who were out on the course had about 23 kilometers left to go in their race. There was Caitlin Ruerda, Michaela Arends, Haley Smith, and Lucy Hampstead all in the mix, and their race was just cut off. Listeners, if you haven't been following our coverage, you should get Terry McCall's detailed reporting on our website. It is real reporting, not the, aren't Canadians soft, that you are seeing on some other channels out there. So what was the reason, Matt? Do you remember the exact reason for the cancellation?
Like some of the reports were saying it was 30, but apparently it was much hotter than that on some of the climbs in the exposed areas. We all know what it's like to go up a climb and that heat comes down on you. But also people were having heat-related issues, but also there was a paucity of aid available, right, because of that. And so when you don't have enough people to help, then you've got to cancel the race. I mean, it was a horrible call, I'm sure, to make, but I mean, I think it's a little more detailed than that, but...
Exactly. The story that it was too hot is actually too simplistic. I know there's a lot of debate. How hot was it? You have people saying, it wasn't that hot. It was less than, 33 degrees, or it was around 33 degrees. There were reports that the ambient temperature was close to 40. Whatever the case, I think the kicker here was that medical resources, this is a quote from the director, medical resources began to reach their capacity, creating a vulnerable situation for riders on course. I think that's the clincher, really. If you can't support the riders and another emergency happens or more medical aid is needed than you can possibly supply, that's the breaking point.
But it also raises a lot of questions now. A lot of the times now, Cycling Canada has taken existing races and then added on a Gravel Nationals. Like we saw this originally with Paris to Ancaster. And obviously it makes sense to have a turnkey event like that. But now you're also mixing in an existing race with people who are, obviously Mike Woods can handle the heat. Ben Perry can handle the heat. The top women and men are more used to it, not just from a fueling and hydration. Well, yeah, they also have more experience in dealing with this stuff. But then you've got other people who may not be used to it, and you're mixing the two together. And that's what was interesting when you heard from Woods, and nothing against his report because, I read he said, I don't know why they cancel it. And it's true from his point of view, he was fine, right? he's also won stage of the Tour de France. He's ridden in 40-degree weather. And like we know, he's got experience in dealing with this stuff. He's ridden way more hot races than maybe I hate to say average Joe, but the only word I can think of, average Joe or Jane who does these races. So that's sort of the other thing that's sort of interesting with all this.
I will add that just recently, before recording this segment of the podcast, Terry broke some more news that Cycling Canada would be recognizing results in some categories, but not others. So the ones that would not get official results or recognition are the men's elite and women's races, and also men's and women's results in Masters A 35 to 39, 40 to 44, Masters B 45 to 49, and 50 to 54. It's a big bummer to all those racers who, like you said, spent the time, the money, had this as a goal race, and then it was all just cut short.
I just feel bad. It's such a privilege and an honor to be a national champion for a year and wear the jersey. And it's, I just can't imagine the disappointment on these people's, not just Woods, but all the Masters. I mean, you're so happy, right? Like wow, I won the Nationals, and then kaboom. I mean, it's just brutal.
All right, Matt, let's quickly touch on some notable racing that's been out there. Finn Isles has been doing quite well in the World Cup of Downhill. In Leogang and Lenzerheide, he has won those two World Cups. He actually leads the overall standings in the Downhill Mountain Bike World Cup. So it's good to see Finn Isles. He had success early on, and he's had, like most athletes, he's had his ups and downs. So it's really cool to see him succeeding at the moment. Sydney Swearinga from Vancouver and recent guest on the podcast. She did quite well at the Volta Ciclista at
Just
Catalunya.
ruined my weekend,
Feminina. Let me finish saying the race. How did Sydney Swearinga ruin your weekend, Matt Hansen?
She got third overall at you can say the race.
Volta Ciclista at Catalunya Femenina.
No, but amazing ride. I mean, and good company too. I mean, it's unbelievable some of the results she's been getting. And also, Kara Lillick, as we know, also had a great ride in the first stage. She got fifth. So that was nice to see her back at it.
And I don't know if you mentioned this part, but Swearinga was third on the second stage.
And that more or less secured her overall GC, because the last stage, Marianne Vos won, but it was more or less flat, or just a bunch finish. So yeah, it was awesome. I mean, she's such a great little climber.
Also in road racing, Sarah Van Dam of Visma Lease Bike has continued her so darn close to a big result season. At the Tour de Suisse on stage 2, she was second after Elisa Longo Borghini. The result put the Victoria rider in third overall.
And the white jersey.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, the time trial, she lost the white jersey to Cedrine Cabal, and then on Sunday, she tried her best. She still finished top 10, but amazing ride though. Yeah,
it is amazing. She was 7th overall and second in the young riders classification, and Sarah Van Dam continues to battle. It's just any day now, any race now.
The best thing is the one thing, and this is not funny at all, but the one takeaway as well, that horrible stage where Urska Zigart crashed on that speed bump, she was away when she got second. Sarah was away on her own, and she went over that thing, and she just cut a little, she thankfully held it upright, because I would hate to see what happened to her if she happened to Urska, it's just brutal. Like, that crash is just the stuff of nightmares, man. 50K an hour going head over, The fact that it only has a fractured jaw is just amazing, because that's the kind of stuff that bad things can happen.
Right.
So that was horrible. But anyways, thankfully she didn't.
Thankfully Sarah made it through that bump. All right, Matt, let's now look to the feature interview. It's the legend, Alex Stieda. For some of you listeners, I know you're probably saying, what? A Canadian was the first male North American to pull on the Tour de France's yellow jersey? Yes, it's true. Others, I know you know the story very well, but I'll say that even if you're familiar with Alex's story, there are tidbits in this interview for you, because we go deep on that historic stage 1A of the 1986 Tour de France. So have a listen to Alex Stieda's big day at the Tour from 40 years ago. Alex Stieda, welcome to the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast.
Hello, great to be here, Matthew.
We are speaking ahead of a notable anniversary. On July 5th, 1986. That day will mark 40 years since you used your skills and maybe a bit of guile to take the yellow jersey at the Tour de France. You became not just the first Canadian to do so, but the first North American male to pull on the maillot jaune. I want to get into details about that historic day. I should note that, listeners, you can read a full feature on Alex in the latest issue of the magazine or in our online members section. Alex, before we go back to 1986, let us go back even further in time. What's a Canadian kid from Coquitlam, BC, doing racing bikes? You won the Tour de l'Abitibi in 1980. That was your last year as a junior. You went on to the LA Olympics for track cycling. You also took a bronze medal in individual pursuit at the 1982 Commonwealth Games in Australia. So what's going on, Alex? Were you bad at hockey or something?
Yeah, actually it was. I really wanted to be a pro hockey player. I wanted to be a goalie. Tony Esposito was my lifelong, role model. But when I started playing hockey, my parents finally let me start playing when I was 11. I turned out I was a pretty good skater, so I wasn't allowed to play goal. So I played hockey through to when I was 16, and went up to juvenile A rep, which is like AAA now as they call it, and did pretty well. We went to the BC Winter Games with our team, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the camaraderie and the team spirit of playing hockey. It's just such a wonderful game. But I wasn't, there was no drafting. There was no college scholarships being offered. And I thought, well, maybe I should still play. And I was looking for something to do in the summer to stay in shape for hockey. It was just like this internal motivation. And turned out, my mom and my dad, my mom from England, my dad from Germany, had ridden bikes when they were young, growing up in their respective countries. My mom in particular rode bikes with her dad, my grandfather, who was a member of the Chichester Wheelers in the UK, right? And they would go on these randonneur rides. And my mom gave me all of his logbooks with every detail of every ride he did every day, the weekly totals, the monthly totals, the annual totals in the 50s.
This sounds like pre-Strava.
Yes. Yeah, handwritten Strava, absolutely. So there was this knowledge of cycling with my parents, and so they encouraged me to start this riding. At first, I did some sort of random, camping rides. I had a rat trap on my 10-speed, and got myself to the ferry terminal and went to the Gulf Islands on a camping trip on my own at 16 years old. Just when the parents said, "Yeah, go ahead."
Right, and so we call this is pre-bikepacking.
That's right.
When it was known as touring.
Yeah, exactly. I love the exploration, the feeling of, finding new areas, new roads, just getting lost, finding my way. That was just such a great feeling.
And then how did you get into the more competitive side?
So I started riding an introduction to racing by doing the veterans time trial. They called them veterans back then. Now they're called masters. But the Veterans Club in Vancouver had a time trial out at UBC every Thursday night. So it was like open to all. There was no licensing required, no liability forms. Of course, this is like 1976, 77. And you just rolled up to the start line. They wrote your name down and you just went out and back through the S-turns at UBC and went as hard as you could. And my times got better every Thursday. And then there was a few juniors that I was riding, that I met there. Bruce Spicer, Brian Green, Neil Davies, Corey Sinclair, they were all kind of doing the same thing, but they'd been riding for a few years already. Here comes this kid with a hockey helmet, because that's all I had. I had a hockey helmet. Just took the visor off. And they said, well, why don't you go try this criterium? What's a criterium? Up in Ladner. So I entered Cat 5 and won that. And then they said, well, we have this velodrome, this cycling track. You should come and ride that. And I was like, what the heck is that? They got me out to some training sessions, and just so happened there was a coach there named Barry, or Baz, we call him Baz Lysette. He lives in Victoria now. He's been doing bike fitting forever. He was from the UK, and he had all this knowledge of track training. And he just helped bring me up. Well, along with the other juniors, we started riding and racing together. And pretty soon, I was sucked into this world of road and tracks racing.
So let's skip ahead then to your landing a spot on 7-Eleven. The team started, I believe it was in 81, but it wasn't professional yet. It went professional in 85, and in 86 you got a spot. And what got you there?
Well, you have to go back a few steps, but
Okay.
there was a pro in Vancouver at the time named Ron Heyman. He runs a really successful junior race weekend in Penticton where he lives every year called the Future Champs now. But back then, he was a pro bike racer. He'd been going to Europe in the summer and then coming home to Vancouver to train in the winter. And so he was really a mentor for me. And he and another mentor, Roger Sumner, another expat Brit, sat me down in the fall of 1980. I had gone to the Junior Worlds in 79, and some guy named Greg LeMond just beat me in the pursuit by a hair. I got fifth.
That name will come up again, Greg LeMond.
Yeah, he will. Yeah, exactly. And they said, listen, Alex, you need to go to Europe to learn how to be a real bike racer. I was like, well, no, I am a bike racer. No, you've been racing. You're a big fish in a small pond. You need to go to Europe. So Ron arranged for me to go in the spring of 1981 to Ghent, Belgium, and stay with a friend of his, Luke Eisermans, to sort of learn the ropes and what bike racing was really about. So I got a grant from the city of Coquitlam for $500. My parents couldn't afford it. That got me a flight from Vancouver to Ottawa, and then Cycling Canada got me a free flight on a DND flight from Ottawa to Lahr to the CFB there. And then from there, I had to drag my bike box to the train station at Lahr and take the train to Frankfurt, do a transfer to Ghent. I'd never been to Europe, no cell phone, no credit cards, 20 years old, on my own. My parents just said, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, send us a postcard, as we did back then. Met up with Luke. He got me a place to stay in Drongen, just outside of Ghent. It was called what we now call a cold water flat, which means only cold running water, no toilet, no flushing toilet. There was an outhouse in the backyard of the place. And I had a roommate named Ricky Flood, who was a bike racer from Australia doing the same thing. Like, oh, there's other people doing this too. Oh, wow. I went, just rode, put a backpack on and rode to the kermesse, did the race, came back. If it was raining and with my bare hands, if I touched the door handle of the flat, I got an electric shock. Like, this place was bare bones. Bare bones.
And it had dodgy wiring.
Totally. Yeah. We had like a hot plate to cook rice on.
Right. I think I heard a story that with your winnings, you would spring for a can of tuna fish or something.
Well, yes. Yeah. I mean, there was prizes, absolutely. And you had to sort of figure out the system and find the cafe or the bar where the start sign-on was. You just rode your bike up. No one worried about locking their bikes. You just left your bike outside, went inside, and paid your entry fee. And it was really a deposit for your race number. And then after the race, you went back and gave the number back, and they gave you your deposit back. And if you had placed, then you get your prizes. It was actually, it was Belgian francs before before Euro land. The best part was I learned how to make real money by being in the break and letting the guy who wanted to win that kermesse offer us, everyone on the break, money not to win. I know. I mean,
you have to be a bit enterprising.
Enterprising. Each of these guys in their local cycling clubs in Belgium have a budget to win races so that they can make their palmares look really, really good so they can get a better pro contract.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
they're investing in themselves, and it means some negotiations and breakaways.
That's correct. Yeah, and I was just like a mercenary. I didn't care. I needed to make the extra cash so I could put some canned tuna in my rice, like I said.
It's amazing. All right, let's jump ahead though, because we got to get to the tour and 7-Eleven. This was the team's first time at the Tour de France.
Well, I'll interrupt you because you asked how I got on the 7-Eleven team.
Oh yes, yes.
Right. So because I actually won 4 Kermesse races and sold a few to make some extra money. That was the spring of 81. And because of that, Ron Heyman suggested to Jim Okowitz, who ran the team, hey, you should invite Alex to come out in the fall to ride with us and race with us in the East Coast around New York City. So I did what we now call a stagiare and rode with them in the Mohawk Carpet Race and the Apple Lap in New York City. I just was having so much fun. We were driving down Fifth Avenue in a fully branded 7-Eleven team van, shooting bottle rockets out of the window.
You guys are trouble.
I want to be on this team. But I think, it was about fitting in, and I think I did fit in. And, I was asked to join the team for the 1982 season. And it was, like you said, it was an amateur team then because we all had to stay amateur for the 84 Olympics because pros weren't allowed to ride in the Olympics at that time.
Right. So you guys get invited to the tour for 86. How prepared were you and the team for going to the main event, La Grande Boucle? I'm guessing, and I think I heard, there were no stage recons.
We didn't ride the Dauphiné. We didn't ride Tour Suisse. We had a training camp in Santa Barbara in June. The team had turned pretty much all of the other guys had turned pro after the 84 Olympics and raced in Europe in 85. I was a little bit unsure, because I'd been focused on the track and not doing enough really big road races. So I raced road mostly for, with the 7-Eleven amateur team in North America, as well as for the Canadian national road team in 85, and then turned pro for 86. We had been in Europe. We went to Europe in February of 86, did the Giro de Sicilia, Sicily, beautiful southern Italy in February. Sure. Yeah, we stayed. We did quite a few, all the other spring races. We did Paris-Nice, Critérium International, San Remo, just hanging on for dear life. Just completely out of my depth. I hadn't raced over 200K ever.
And so then, rolling up to the tour, your team 7-Eleven, how are you received by the Europeans? Were you getting comments? Was it open arms? Was it welcome North Americans to the Tour de France?
In the races, in the spring that we did, and leading up to the tour, we were definitely the outsiders. Hardly anyone spoke English or didn't want to speak English to us. Phil Anderson was there, Robert Miller. Sometimes they were in the same race as us, and we could converse a little bit. But for the most part, they were just swearing at us in whatever language they felt like it. Because if there was a crash, it was the American team's fault.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, Raul Alcala was on the team from Mexico, and myself, Canada, and Ron Heyman a little bit just at the start, and then he retired and became a director. But it was we were the outsiders. Definitely, we were constantly having to prove ourselves and ride as properly as possible, so that we didn't get blamed for the crashes.
I'm going to get into customs and tradition and riding properly, if you will, in a minute. But so the tour that year started with a prologue. You were 21st. Did you? I think I heard somewhere you missed the start and lost 15. No, that was not fact.
That's not a fact. Back then, we didn't have rollers or trainers to warm up on. So we were just kind of like, doing sort of small laps around close to the start house. And generally we were getting there to the start house way too soon because we didn't want to miss our start. Of course, so the warm up was really zero. But we were the last team to be invited to the tour, and it was a 10-man team. And I had the last number on the team, number 210. Consequently, I was the first rider to go off. Right, because it goes in reverse order. I was able to ride on the course as a warm-up because no one else was racing before me. So that really gave me an advantage, I think, because I could preview the turns, how fast, looking for the traffic islands and all the, different, the crosswalks and whatever else in the way. And I realized it was more like a criterium circuit It was just over 4 kilometers, which was perfect because I'm a pursuiter, and love going fast through corners like on a criterium. So I knew I was going to be able to do a fast time.
You, like I said, you were 21st on the stage. Terry Marie won, so he was in yellow at the start of stage 1A. Now, this seems strange to a modern cycling fan, probably, but it was happened quite a few times in the 80s for sure, that there were split first stages. Sometimes you see them written stage 1 and 2, but they're both on the same day. And then you also see them stage 1A and 1B. Stage 1A. How did you prepare for that? And maybe I'll just add, you mentioned a criterium-like circuit for the prologue. The stage 1A was around an 85-kilometer urban road stage. I guess criterium-like in the sense that it had a few turns. It was in the city.
Well, it wasn't a circuit though. It was point to point, but there were lots of turns. And what I realized was, there were 5 time bonus sprints, each worth 12 seconds in the 85-kilometer stage, which is crazy compared to what it is like now. And, in a 200 plus or minus 200K stage, there's maybe 1 time bonus sprint intermediate, during the stage. But so they had 5 because they had a separate jersey category, the red jersey, for the intermediate time bonus points. So, I finished 21st, but I was only 12 seconds down on Terry Marie after the prologue. So I thought to myself, I didn't really talk to my teammates about it, but I said, if I could get away on my own, I know this is audacious thinking, this is stage 1A of the Tour de France, then I could win some of those time bonus sprints and leapfrog ahead on GC. So, all right, let's give it a try. I also realized that 85K is like a long criterium. We've raced 80-kilometer criteriums in the States, in Canada. Don't need any food, so I don't need anything in my pockets. And aerodynamics are important, so I thought, why not wear a skin suit?
So this is what I was thinking what I thought of when you said we had to race properly. That wasn't exactly proper attire at the time.
It was not.
Did you hear any comments?
I heard comments from my teammates, right? So we rolled up to the start line. I take off my long sleeve warm up, and I'm wearing a skin suit. And the guys on my team are just looking at me, Alex, come on, we're trying to fit in here, and you're rolling up with a skin suit. Like, come on, what are you thinking? I said, well, let's see, let's see what happens.
Maybe that's not like now that you're telling the story, I'm thinking, for a bunch of North Americans to end up at the Tour de France at this time, you're already, how do I put this nicely? You think outside the box. So you're continuing to think outside the box.
Well, the 7-Eleven team was breaking new ground everywhere we went. We did things differently. Lots of the Euros were shaking their heads like, who are these jokers? What do they think they're doing? We had Shelley Versus, the first female soigneur to work in Europe. And, she took a lot of heat from the other soigneurs, from the other riders. Like, who is this? She had to work twice as hard.
Yeah. Her story is fascinating. And actually, as I was watching some of the coverage of your day, or that stage 1A, I was listening to some commentary. Let's just say, even for someone who was trying to be gentle about it, was still sexist and a bit. It was still like not trying to be overtly sexist, but the comments were just like, "Oh man, come on."
I know. Think mid 80s. The sexism was rampant. And having a woman working as a support person at the Tour de France was unthinkable for the Europeans.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So you rock up in your skin suit. The race gets underway. And okay, I'm not giving anything away when I say you got away, but I'm interested in the mechanics of your breakaway. Like, how did you get away with that?
Yeah, and I realized if I tried to attack and go full gas from the field, that it would cause a reaction. So what I decided to do was just sort of tap a few guys on the hip, let me through, excusez. I said, in my basic French, je dois pisser. I have to piss. So it's about 20K in to the 85K stage. And I chose a point where I could see the road was turning ahead. So I just sort of rolled up the side of the road a little faster, but everyone was really trying to stay relaxed, I think, because they had a team time trial in the afternoon. Everyone was saving matches for that, for sure, because it was 60 plus kilometers of hard team time trial that would make a difference on GC. So I just rolled up and just sort of rolled up, didn't really worry about looking back, and, just made it look kind of casual, like I was going to stop to pee. And then as soon as I went around a turn, I looked back, I couldn't see them because I was out of sight then. I just put it in the 5312, which was the biggest gear we had then, and went as hard as I could, like a full gas pursuit effort to open the gap. Of course, there was no team radios then. There was only the chalkboard guy, on a motorbike. So it takes time for the motorbike and the chalkboard guy to catch up and hit their stopwatch and then get the time and then drift back to the peloton. And they showed it was up. I was over 3 minutes ahead.
That's wild. Casual breakaway, just like look casual and then motor away in the biggest gear you got.
Yeah.
I just can't believe they bought it.
Well, I think, they certainly weren't taking us too seriously, right? Because, we're like this, American team who, we'd had a few results in Italy the year before.
Oh, at the Giro, yes.
At the Giro, and also Trofeo La Guelia when Ron Kiefel won that single day race. And, there's Eric Heiden had won some sprints, the sprint category in the Giro. So yeah, we're there, but, nothing consistent. So yeah, it was, they weren't taking us seriously.
So you're away, and how many, you said there was 5 time bonuses, and how many did you collect?
I think I got 3 of them because I went through 2 of them. And then my team car came up and Mike Neal, who was driving the car, our director, said, Alex, there's a break coming. The next time bonus sprint is just a few K ahead. You got to go hard and get that. So I dug in again to get that time bonus sprint.
Okay. And then that breakaway caught up with you. I believe there were 5 riders in it.
Yeah.
Including Phil Anderson.
That's right.
What did Phil Anderson say to you?
Yeah. And it's funny because, in the context of the races, I think Phil was being kind of cautious with us. Like, who are these guys? Like he wasn't, super friendly with us, but the break was rolling past me and he just reached out and tapped my leg and said, "Oi, Alex, you're in the yellow. Come on." What? Phil Anderson actually, gave me a word of encouragement. Like, oh my God. So yeah. And I just jumped in and started doing my turn in the break.
Where do you think that came from? Why was Phil suddenly like, all right, let's get this crazy Canuck going. Let's help him out.
Well, fellow Commonwealth, rider, I guess.
It's for the Queen. It's
right. Yeah, for the Queen, of course. But no, I think he saw a bit of himself in me, maybe, because he had come over on his own and had to figure it out himself. And, I think there was a bit of, feeling of, hey, let's give this guy a chance type of thing.
Right on. And so you're in this breakaway. I was trying to figure out how far away from the finish you were. I think it was somewhere around 20 kilometers at that point.
Yeah, something like that. I don't have the exact details. It's never been recounted in a book or anything like exactly how many kilometers it was, but it felt like an eternity, let me tell you.
I'm sure it did. But like your work wasn't over then. It's not like, oh, yep, I'm in yellow now with those time bonuses. I can just hold on. What did you have to do? What was still left to do for you?
So I realized that if we got caught and it came down to a bunch sprint, there's a good chance Eric van der Rodden would have won the bunch sprint and the final time bonus, which was actually quite a bit more than 12 seconds. I think it was like 20 seconds or something. So I realized, because Eric van der Rodden had finished like second on the prologue, so he was right up there on time. I realized my job wasn't to try to win the stage. My job was try to keep the breakaway from getting caught. So what happens, as you can well imagine, you're in the first stage of Tour de France, there's 6 guys in a break. Everyone wants to win the stage except me. And they start attacking the break, with 15K to go, 10K to go. They start attacking. So the other guys chase. As soon as they catch the guy, everyone sits up. Well, I'm not going to pull. Right? And then the next guy goes. As we know, that sort of yo-yo effect is a lot slower. And that's how you get caught. So I realized my job was, as soon as the guys caught the guy who had attacked, I went to the front and drove the pace and just rode a hard tempo. As hard, whatever I had left, I just went as hard as I could to keep the pace rolling, and then I would die out, and then the next guy would attack. Then the guys would chase. I would hang on for dear life, and then as soon as we caught that guy, I would go to the front and keep pulling.
My gosh.
Oh my gosh. So I did like 4 times. I had to just pull it and just dig deeper to bring it back. This is the first day of the Tour de France. There's still 3 weeks to go. And I'm digging a hole for myself in a big way.
And then, so what's the last or the final kilometer like for you?
I distinctly remember turning a right turn and going up this big, broad boulevard and looking ahead. Your worst nightmare is that it's a false flat uphill to the finish. Like you can't coast. We made the turn. We're starting about 500 meters to go to the line. And I look back and I can see the peloton coming behind us. Full gas sprinting. I just drove it as hard as I could. I gave these guys an amazing lead out. I didn't care. I just made sure that that we didn't get caught. And I got fifth in the sprint, and didn't win the stage. But I had done my job, keeping the main field from catching.
And so when did you know for sure that you had the yellow jersey?
I crossed the line, was sort of sitting down, just collapsed. And then Oach runs up to me. Jim Ockowitz, our director, we nicknamed him Oach. And he runs up and just pulls me up and starts hugging me and kissing me. I was like, this is the first time I've been kissed by a man on the cheek. Anyway, and you did it, Alex. You're in the yellow. I was like, what? Are you kidding? I had no idea. Well, of course, I had a thought that it was possible, but I didn't really know for sure, and I couldn't understand the announcers or anything, and it was all pretty rudimentary back then too, right? And then Phil Leggett comes up, and he has the camera behind him, and then he starts this interview like, "Oh, Alex Stieda, I think he said or something. You're the first American to wear the yellow jersey." And I just stopped him. Phil, I'm Canadian.
You did. I've actually found that footage, and you're pretty quick to. He says something like, "What's it like being the first American?" And you're like,
Right.
"Well, I can tell you as the first Canadian."
Right.
I'm paraphrasing, but you did. It was pretty funny. Actually.
Very proud to be Canadian, absolutely. And then he coined the term, first North American to wear the yellow jersey. Yeah, that just rolled off his tongue so fast.
We should mention here maybe that it's the first North American male, because you reminded me before we started recording that a U.S. woman won the Tour de France Femme in '84, and that was
Marianne Martin.
Marianne Martin. Yes. Still, a bunch of firsts coming up in the '80s for North Americans. But you didn't just win the yellow jersey.
That's right.
It was a long ceremony for you. I understand it.
Well, yeah, the last thing you want to do is be on your feet after finishing a stage of Tour de France, never mind, being in the break and all the extra work I had to do. But I had to stand there and go back and forth up to the podium. First, they gave me the white jersey as the best rookie, then the intermediate red points jersey, then the combination jersey, which they don't have anymore, as well as the red jersey. It's a combination of all the points of all the jerseys together. So that was a third jersey, because I guess they had another sponsor, so they had to give him something. And I had the polka dot jersey because I'd gone through some small category 5 hills, wouldn't call them climbs at all, but in my breakaway had gone through those and claimed those as well. The 5th jersey was finally the yellow jersey.
You did say that, the last thing you want to do is be on your feet, but as you mentioned earlier, that, the teams were maybe taking it a little easy because they knew there was a team time trial in the afternoon. This doesn't sound like ideal preparation for a team time trial for you.
No, it certainly wasn't. And 2 of my teammates, Jeff Pierce and Chris Carmichael, they had been sort of trying to neutralize any chases in the peloton while I was away. So they were following attacks and sitting up and, not really blocking, let's say, but just trying to get in the way. So they had put out a lot of effort as well. It was a 10-man team in those days. Crazy. 3 of us were already pretty gassed. The good news is, because I had the yellow jersey, we were the last team to start the team time trial, which was a 56K team time trial. We had not done any recon of the course, the riders or the directors. We were just riding around each turn blind. What's around the next turn? We're in the line and we're looking ahead. You can see where the lead police motorbike is turning. There must be a turn. Okay, I guess, get ready for a turn.
Right. So you're doing this by the seat of your pants.
Totally.
And three of you were, let's say, anything but fresh. And things went wrong. When did things start going wrong during this time
Well,
trial?
there was quite a few incidents in the team time trial. You can imagine 10 riders. You'd have to, be a well-oiled machine to make it go right. Preview the course, know every turn, but of course, we hadn't done too much training at all with 10 guys. One incident was we were going down a false flat really fast. We didn't have aero bikes back then. We had our regular road bikes with a rear disc, which we thought was pretty cool back then. System U had pretty amazing time trial bikes with the cow horns and the whole 9 yards, and they had a little airfoil behind their seat, which quickly got banned by the UCI, of course. But anyway, but we were going down this false flat descent, and there was a left turn at the bottom. We saw the police motorbike turn, so we went, all right, well, we'll go through the turn. But as we turned onto the road that the road turned onto, there was a traffic island right in the middle, which we couldn't see until we're in the turn. So you either cut short and made a tighter turn, or you tried to go around the outside. We were all over the place. Eric Hayden hit the curb, toppled over. So, he had to get a wheel change. We didn't have any spare disc wheels, so he had to put on a regular road wheel. And we had a couple more flats. We hadn't practiced. Okay, if there's a flat, how do we wait? And we're all over the road. Everyone's looking back. There's no kind of coordination. And then another incident was we were sort of in a tree-lined area in a line. Alexei Grewal was at the front. He's more of a climber, of course, not really a guy who rides in crosswinds. And we came out of the trees to where there was a field, and then the crosswind hit us. But it came from the left, and Alexei was all the way to the right-hand side of the road. And we're yelling up the line, Alexei, move left! Didn't understand. Well, to give us a draft so we could have an echelon. So Doug Shapiro, one of my teammates, he had a bit of a temper and took his full water bottle and threw it up the line and hit Alexei square in the back. And Alexei, being a bit of a hothead as well, he turned around and started yelling and screaming. And, we had this big argument.
In the midst of a time trial.
In the midst of a team time trial, yeah.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy.
So we got to about 10, 15K to go of the 56K. And, on every little rise, I couldn't hold the wheel. I was getting dropped. And so the team car came up and said, all right, Chris, Jeff, you ride with Alex. We'll let the team go to make sure they make the time limit, because there was still a time cut to be made in the team time trial. So, yeah, we, the three of us, we just did turns as fast as we could and get ourselves to the finish as fast as possible. Getting dropped by your team in a team time trial in the yellow jersey is not a good feeling and not a good look, but it was, what it was. So we had to just keep going. And I made the time cut by about 45 seconds or something. It could have been a totally, completely different story had we not made the time limit, but we did. We weren't the last team. The Colombian team was the last in the team time trial. And 4 of those riders got eliminated from the Tour de France that day.
On the first official day, they got eliminated. That's rough. So what was, after such a day of ups and downs of the highest highs and chucked water bottles at teammates, what was the mood at the end of the day amongst the team?
I think we were all in a bit of disbelief of what had just happened, the whole thing. The amazing journey of, the team having the yellow and then losing it and all the drama. It was just we were shattered. Of course, we were so tired. All we could do was just, okay, let's put that behind us. Let's move on. And that's what you have to do as a bike racer. You have to just learn to put that behind you.
Well, I think you guys did a pretty good job of it. Can maybe tell us what happened on stage 3, or just who won stage 3?
Yeah, well, I had lost the yellow jersey, but since I had mountain points and there were no mountain points in the team time trial, I still was able to wear the polka dot jersey.
Nice.
The next day. So I'm wearing the polka dot jersey, which was pretty cool. And it was a pretty long stage, and eventually it was fairly flat, but eventually a big group rolled off. And Davis Finney, my teammate, was in that group. We were in the main field, and there's 20 guys up the road. Okay, the stage is gone. So all right, we'll just roll along. Other teams, GC teams, were pulling, Panasonic was pulling to keep it close so they didn't lose time on GC with their favorites and all that. But in the break, this big group, Davis is rolling through. Colombian guy had attacked earlier, so he thought that guy was gone. He was going to sprint for second. He sprints and just barely beats Robert De Bundy for the sprint, and does the bike throw, and it's like a tire width that he wins that sprint by, thinking he's getting second. But what he hadn't realized was the Colombian guy had flatted, and if they had rolled past him and they didn't see him, or Davis didn't see him, so he was actually sprinting for first and actually won the stage.
I love that story. I love that
Oh
story.
my God. Yellow jersey one day, winning the stage the next. The whole peloton was in shock. Like, what is going on?
That was my next question, is what is the peloton saying to you guys? You didn't get the warmest welcome, I guess. And now what are some of the reactions you heard from either other riders or other teams?
They were all thinking, okay, let's see how they do for the rest of the tour. It's a 3-week stage race. It's not 2 days. So as an example, one of the elder statesmen of the peloton, Jerry Kneteman, Dutch rider riding on a Dutch team, and during the following stage, I'm wearing the polka dot, but he comes up to me and he says, Alex, you're good job winning the yellow, but to prove that you are worthy of wearing the yellow, you have to finish the Tour de France. And that just sunk in deep. I realized that, yeah, you're right. This is my mission now, is finish the tour. I did everything I could every day to conserve energy, to follow wheels, to, being as efficient as possible so I could finish the Tour de France. And that meant, at the start of the mountain stages, usually everyone sat around on tables having a coffee, just like we were going to work. It was weird. Guys were reading the paper, and it was like, it was so bizarre. But I sat next to Jerry in the mornings, and I said, okay, what's the plan today? And he was the guy that organized the autobus, or the group of riders that aren't in contention for the stage, that have to conserve energy. They just have to finish within the time limit so they can help their team on another stage. So I said, okay, I'm with you, Jerry. What do we need to do? So he said, okay, we were in the Pyrenees, at first, and he said, okay, on this climb, we're going to lose 10 minutes to the leaders, but on the descent and the flat between, we'll gain back 5 minutes. This climb, we're going to miss 7 minutes, and we'll gain back time before the final climb on Super Bagnères. You have 20 minutes to make the time limit. He had it worked out. And I just said, Jerry, I'm with you. Yeah, we put up his hand to start the autobus. I was there, and he followed him, and other guys are trying to attack and get away just to try to move up from, 50th to 49th place in GC. And I didn't do that. I was like, no, I got to try to finish.
So your team of 10 riders kind of had a rough time as the tour wore on.
Mm-hmm.
Only 5 finished out of 10. You were in the autobus, you're in the gruppetto, but I've heard stories that made it seem like you weren't exactly suffering too much the whole time. There's footage of you playing a harmonica. This is not during a race, by the way. This is just in a car. Maybe you can corroborate these stories. Did you pull out a water pistol and hit other riders with water?
I do not believe I did that. No.
Okay.
I could have been a Bob Roll story.
Okay, not Alex Stieda. No water pistols. Were you taking pictures of riders with a pocket camera? Uh-huh.
Yes, I did. I did have a pocket camera, an Instamatic, and I've still got some of those pictures, actually. There was a big crash that blocked the road, and I was caught behind it, and I was like, oh, I got my camera. So I pulled it out of my pocket, and...
My goodness.
Yeah, I did. I did do that. I think because it only had like 36 frames, I could only, I didn't have more than one. So I had to use it judiciously.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
The 86 Tour is also known for the conflict within La Vie Claire, that team that contained Greg LeMond and Bernard Hinault. How much of that were you aware of, and did it affect the peloton at all in a larger sense?
Yeah, we didn't really, we weren't too aware of it. Greg wasn't talking to us too much. Yeah, Andy Hampson was on the team as well with La Vie Claire and Steve Bauer. But it's weird, they didn't really talk to us. We didn't talk to them about their internal struggles they were having on their team. And, if Greg had reached out to us, we probably would have helped him, because he had the English-speaking guys on the La Vie Claire team, and then the French-speaking guys, French and Swiss, and they were kind of in two different camps. Yeah, I think, if he would have asked for our help, we would have helped him.
And I think there were times when he got some help from like Phil Anderson and Robert Miller.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's strange he didn't reach out to his fellow North Americans as much.
Well, and to be fair, I don't think we were strong enough to really help that much. We got to the mountains. Most of us were just hanging on for dear life.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, and of course, pro bike race back then wasn't full gas from the start like it is now. Like there wasn't a 60 kilometer fighting to get in the break. There wasn't like that like it is now. So we had time when the peloton would roll along. It would be pretty casual. And of course, when the helicopters came, the TV helicopters came over the hill, then it was full gas all of a sudden. Everyone's like, "Oh, let's put on a show." I remember going, rolling at the back of the peloton, and then I looked across and there's Bob Roll riding no hands at the back of the peloton. He's got an apple in one hand and he pulls out a switchblade on the other and he starts carving his apple with his switchblade, riding no hands. "Bobcat, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm having lunch. Come on, leave me alone." And all of a sudden, the peloton, has to maybe slow down because there's a bridge, and whenever there's a bridge, people crash for some reason. And he just piles into the back of a couple guys in front of him, crashes to the ground, gets up laughing.
My goodness. My goodness.
There's definitely times like that.
You mentioned Steve Bauer recently. He was at that tour, and later on, it seemed he adopted a bit of your playbook, and he maybe took from you for the 1988 and then 1990 Tours de France when he got the yellow jersey from during or after, I should say, the first part of split stages. Is this a case of imitation being the sincerest form of flattery?
I don't think so. I mean, you're always as a depending on the type of rider you are, but Steve and I are probably very similar riders. More like ruler type riders, always trying to get in a break, trying to take advantage of a situation. So yeah, you're always trying to find a way to get in a break and make things happen, other than just sitting there following along. So at that one of those days, it just so happened that Steve got in that break and was, they didn't get chased. Like they were allowed to roll. I think they had 20 minutes at some point. So that really gave him enough of a buffer to hold the yellow jersey for, a number of days, just because they had that much of a lead from no one wanting to chase the break.
All right, I'm going to skip ahead because the Alex Stieda cycling story, it has many chapters. I'm going to skip how you co-founded the Tour of Alberta. I'm going to skip, you did keep racing until 1992. There were many other successes. I'm going to skip them. But I'm going to go right to today. And I want to touch on your involvement in cycling in Edmonton, where you live. What have you been up to in Alberta's capital?
Well, cycling is still part of my life. It's in my blood, I'm going to say. So many people have helped me over the years that I feel like I want to give back. So I've helped the youth development program here at our local club, Juventus Cycling in Edmonton, and we help 11 to 15-year-olds get started in cycling and start to help them race. So I did that for about the last 20 years, and now we have a new velodrome in Edmonton. So I'm helping coach the high performance youth at the velodrome now, in addition to riding the velodrome myself, because it's such a wonderful experience. Yeah, so I lead a weekly gravel ride here in Edmonton with one of the local shops. They organize a gravel event called Festivus of Gravel. Mm-hmm. We just ran it a few weeks ago, and we had over just 300 riders riding Festivus of Gravel, and that's grown over the last 4 years.
I heard at the recent Junior Track Nationals, you were there. You're always a man who's actively helping out. You're not just there to hand out medals, but you're there on the ground making stuff happen. So I've heard stories that corroborate the cycling in your blood. I mentioned at the start of our conversation that there's a feature story about you and your historic moment 40 years ago in the magazine. I'll tell you that when we were working on the story, there was a young contributor in the office. And my colleague, Matt Hansen, who I believe you know, he also helps me host here, he and I were quizzing the young writer and photographer. He knows cycling, but we asked him, do you know who Alex Stieda is? And brace yourself, he didn't. So we razzed him, as old men do. And I will say it was a bit unfair because, had you asked me as a 20-year-old or 23-year-old if I knew who William Torchy Peden was, I wouldn't have known. But in sort of seriousness, this scene got me thinking about the ideas of fame and collective memory. What are your thoughts on fame and, well, the passing of time?
I think time passes really fast, especially as you get older. It seems like time goes by faster. Yeah, and I don't expect everyone to remember what happened in 1986 or my career. Of course not. But I do hear from people every once in a while saying, Alex, I saw you win yellow at the Tour de France, and I started cycling because I saw you win the yellow jersey at the Tour de France.
Mm-hmm.
And it still happens. It still comes up. So people, do remember.
No, it's true. I will add that when Mike Woods won a stage at the Tour de France, and also Hugo Uhl in the past few years, people are celebrating that, and people were sending corrections to us saying, don't forget Alex Stieda, don't forget Alex Stieda. And we're like, yes, we remember him. He won yellow. These guys won a stage. But you're right. Like your name is inextricably linked to Canada and the Tour de France.
Yeah, it is. Of course, there's many other great memories I have of riding my bike, racing my bike. But yeah, the Tour de France yellow and finishing the Tour de France for me was one of my biggest accomplishments as a pro.
When you look at the pro peloton today, is there anything that looks strange to you or mystifying or makes you think like, oh man, we would never have thought of that in our day?
Well, the pro peloton has changed a lot over the years. The race radios have changed the way races are run, the tactics, all of that. So it's much more controlled. The riders are given specific instructions from the directors via the radio. So there's a bit of I'm not sure. Things have to change and move forward. I understand. The other big thing is nutrition. Okay, well, let's talk about aerodynamics is huge, and of course all those marginal gains. But the nutrition is huge. When I think about how we raced in the 80s, we were racing on fumes, literally.
Right. You barely ate enough.
Barely ate enough, and we weren't eating the right things at the right time. We thought we were because that's the knowledge we had at the time, and it was passed down from the generation before. Oh, you have to have steak in the morning before the stage, and blah blah blah. We were eating paninis, with the buns that they made. They pulled out the white of the inside of the bun and then stuffed it with the leftover omelet from the morning breakfast, and then wrapped it, and that's what we got in our feed bag. We had ricotta cheese and honey in the middle of a panini. Really tasty, but okay, not the easiest to digest maybe. Now they're just pounding, super carb mix in their bottles nonstop just to, get 120, 140 grams of carbs an hour. And we didn't know any of that.
Last question for you, Alex. Is there something about when you look at the pro peloton that you still recognize? What are there timeless elements there that you see?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a fan. Just watched the Dauphiné. Can't call it the new name yet.
I can't do it either yet.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. The way the race plays out, there's the break, and then and can the break make it to the end or not? And that's always exciting to me to see if the break can make it, because I was one of those guys that was in the break trying to make it. Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. So that it brings a smile to my face when the breakaway gets to the finish before the peloton and a guy from the break wins a stage. That is, I understand what that means to those riders, those teams. It's huge. For a lot of people, they don't understand why that's so important, but that's a big deal.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for taking us back to 40 years ago. To some, it seems like a long time, but as you said, time passes so quickly. And anyway, it was fun hearing all about that. And thank you again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you to Canadian Cycling for everything you guys do to keep us abreast of what's happening around the world with cyclists from Canada. That's so important.
And that's the episode. It is written and edited by me, Matthew Puro. I had help from Matt Hansen. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome for being the glue once again.
the glue.
The glue that keeps this ship together.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Truly.
This episode of the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast is produced by Adam Killick. He does the music too. Also, special thanks to Ontario Creates for its support. Matt, it's summertime. It's officially summertime.
Summertime, yeah.
Yeah. The weather's been good. Riding's been good.
Lots of bike races to watch, at least.
To watch. Bikes are rolling in for us to test. So exciting.
You and I almost are getting a tan, sort of. But we're still like pretty pale.
It's hard to shake off.
Yeah.
I'm sure listeners have gotten more sun than we have. Listeners, thank you very much for tuning in. Please rate and review the show. Tell a friend. Get them to subscribe to the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast. Subscribe to the magazine. It comes out in glorious print. As I mentioned earlier, there is a feature on Alex Stieda in the current issue. It's written by Jake Williams, who we should get back on the show soon. He's probably getting a better tan than we are. All right, everyone. Thanks again for listening. Ride safely, and we'll talk to you later.